So, Kelli O'Hara, your fifth Tony nomination in a row. I mean, you've been on Broadway 5 times in the last sort of decade, 5 Tony nominations. What did this one mean to you compared to the other four?
Well, they're all very special. It sounds cliche to say you're always honored to be nominated, but this show and this part um, means a great deal to me because I helped build the part for 5 years. I've been working on it off and on, and it's very special and close to my heart. So this nomination was a great sense of relief and validation, I guess you could say, for all the work that I put into it and all the heart that I felt for it. So it's very special to me.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary piece, Bridges of Madison County. I mean, I was one of those people that was shocked on Tony nominations morning that it didn't get a Best Musical nomination. I thought that this year they expanded the field to potentially five, and the fact that it wasn't is one of those head scratchers. I mean, we're awards nuts, and we can never figure these things out. But you must have been so pleased for Jason Robert Brown to get the nomination for his score and his orchestrations.
Of course, I think if Jason hadn't gotten a nomination, I think I would have just, as far as being confused, that would be an understatement. It would just have blown my mind, only because, I know we care about the things we do a lot, and we don't expect everybody to feel the same, but across the board, Jason has gotten the response to this particular creation and this writing and these orchestrations that you can only dream of getting. He's really outdone himself on this one. He wrote this score. He wrote it for me in mind, and it was a collaboration. And when a composer says they're going to do something and promises you something and then delivers, it's been one of the most special experiences I've ever had. And so I'm so pleased that he's being honored for that.
And yet, I think when you first, going back to 5 years ago, and the workshop, wasn't Stephen Pasquale's character, that had the more songs had been written for him, hadn't they? I mean, weren't these songs that you've been given during the process more?
Yeah, I think Jason started to write the book was more based on the Robert character, and then Marcia Norman, who Pulitzer Prize winning writer who teamed up with Jason to write this, really wanted to turn it into the Francesca story about women's choices. She wanted to give it a voice, her own voice in certain ways. So Jason started naturally, as composers will often do, to write in his own voice, which was the male voice. But once it started to turn in the direction of really Francesca's story, her journey more, these songs started flowing out of him for me, like I can't explain. Between the first workshop and the second workshop, the amount of miraculous writing and glorious singing he provided me with was magical. I couldn't believe it. The songs he showed up with in a matter of 6 months are some of the most beautiful I've ever gotten the chance to sing or hear.
And was one of those that first number, which is just breathtaking, To Build a Home? I mean,
He brought that to me on the second workshop, and I couldn't believe what hit me. I started to sing it, and it was like it flowed out of my mouth like I've never experienced. I just looked at him it was just gratitude. I couldn't believe it.
no, I mean, as somebody sitting in the audience, I mean, it's spellbinding. It was, I mean, that was a magical moment, I think, in the theater, because the way you come out, command the stage, deliver what I can almost like an aria, and set the tone. I mean, talk about it, that it firmly establishes its Francesca story. I mean, that does. Now, it differs from the book and particularly the film in some ways, and certainly, now that unfortunately the show's closed, I mean, the ending was. I was pleased with the ending, that it didn't sort of follow that of the film. How familiar were you with the material before you started working on it?
Well, people get confused about why genres, why you spread out in different genres from a particular source material. People think, oh, well, it's not like the movie. Well, of course it's not, because the movie is its own interpretation of the source material. We wouldn't take it from the movie. We would take it from the source material, which was the Robert Waller
Right.
novel. I had read the novel as a teenager.
Oh my
And
God. Are you that you're that young, or I'm that old that you were a teenager? Okay.
Well, I was definitely a teenager when I read it, which was a good time to read it because it was so sordid and sexual, and it was I was sitting in my room going ooh, um, but I never really watched the film. The film is extremely different from even the book. Really, it's a whole new screenplay that was written as more of a two-hander, and it was very verbalized. The book is a lot of interior thought. So they took the source material to write to then create this other leg, which is the musical version, and then they expanded that tenfold. I mean, it became this, we talk about backstory, we talk about the relationships that these two people have had in their lives. And I think that expansion was beautiful, and beautifully musicalized, really. It was great source material for that type of thing. I didn't really watch the movie, just pieces of Meryl's performance so I could see what she did, and then go try not to commit suicide. She's so wonderful. But I am familiar with all parts of it, but we definitely don't try to do anything like the film. And then we wanted the story to end appropriately for our journey, for Francesca's journey. And so it's different than what you see in the book or the film.
Yeah, what's interesting is that you were very involved with the workshops and things, but then something happened personally that kept you from doing that Williamstown production of it, didn't it? What was that?
Well, that was heartbreaking because I had they were on a time crunch to do it this season, and in order to do that, they had to try it out of town for 3 weeks. But unfortunately, I was almost 9 months pregnant, and but they did it this way.
That would be a whole different kind of story, then, wouldn't it?
Would be completely inappropriate for this 4-day affair to have any heat or passion. But I was lucky enough that they wanted to build it around a schedule where I could do it on Broadway. So they went ahead and they went with my standby, her name is Elena Shadow, and she's brilliant and wonderful. She did it for me the 3 weeks there in Williamstown. And then we brought it into Broadway and re-rehearsed it and put it back together and made some changes. But the good thing about that was I was able to waddle up to Williamstown and see it twice, so I could have some opinion on it, which was a bit of the collaboration that I wouldn't have normally had on any other show. So it was good.
To be able to be in the audience and see
right.
what's going on. I mean, and I guess what's been wonderful about doing the smaller space like at Williamstown is because I know they do want to tour it, and the fact that it probably can be a little malleable in terms of the staging.
Right.
Because one of the really interesting things and divisive things about the staging was the onlookers. The fact that there were these people sitting there, and it was. What was that like for you on stage? Because it was a little unsettling watching it from the audience.
Well, that's interesting. I think that's the point. I think that Bartlett Sher, who directed it, wanted this idea of. I mean, the whole thing is unsettling when she has this huge secret. She's having an affair. She has this man in her home. Her family's gone. They don't know anything about it. It is unsettling to have this kind of secret and wonder who's looking in the window and who knows the secret, who doesn't. This idea of this discomfort of these people knowing and watching was on purpose. It was on purpose that we aren't alone. There are people that know. The secrets are not always safe, and then also what we did with that, which was to turn it around and say that these people were in support of her in many ways. They may not have agreed with all her choices, but she wasn't as alone as she thought.
Yeah, it was sort of heartbreaking, and then and as you said, it's so different from the film. Not only are you a good 15 years younger than Meryl Streep was, but Stephen Pasquale is decades younger than Clint Eastwood. Oh, by the way, Clint Eastwood's going to be presenting at the Tony Awards, so that could be a good luck charm for you.
Of course, I hope so.
But Stephen Pasquale, so now you had been at Williamstown, hadn't you, the previous summer with him in another musical adaptation of something, right? Hadn't you done?
Stephen and I did a wonderful show called Far From Heaven, which another film adaptation, but we did that in Williamstown, and then we did it at Playwrights Horizons in the city last year when I was only 7.5 months pregnant. But we made it work somehow, and we loved working together, except in that show we didn't have any chemistry. It wasn't a love story between us. It was actually the absolute opposite. So it was great to kind of stretch all those muscles together as actors. Pasquale and I have known each other for 15 years and have been waiting for this chance to kind of finally do these things together, and Bridges was kind of the mecca there for us.
It's so interesting because now Bart Shear directed this. He also directed two of your other Tony-nominated performances, Light in the Piazza and then South Pacific. Was he involved in Bridges from the outset, from those days of the workshop, or when did he come on board?
Well, I make this joke because it's not a secret that I asked him to come on board. But Marcia Norman and Jason Brown asked me to ask him to come on board. So I make a joke that they only asked me to do it because they wanted to get to Bart Shear. But I don't think that's true. I mean, it's been a great fit for me, and I'm certainly pleased that they wanted to write it for me. But they were interested in having Bart direct it, and so I invited him to take a look at the material and also come and do one of the workshops, and he fell in love with it just like I did. So he was on it from the first reading we did, really.
And do you think that, I mean, to me, having seen sort of all your performances on Broadway, it was the richest. It was probably the most expansive in that I sort of started thinking of you as this actress who sings in a way, rather than this.
I love you.
No, it struck me that I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if going forward, I know you've got lots of musical gigs in the future, but that you're offered sort of legit roles. Is that something you'd be interested in, doing just a straight play on Broadway?
Of course. We try our whole careers. Of course, I feel like I've been going to school for the last 20 years, really, by doing my work. I've been learning, hopefully, to be a better actress, and I'll always be learning. But I did feel like I finally someone trusted me enough to lead this particular show with the acting, and then just happened to throw in some of the best songs I've ever gotten to sing in my life. So it's been a great pleasure to be able to do this, and I do hope with all my heart that it invites more work as an actress in plays. I've done a few things around town. I did a Shakespeare play a couple of years ago and things like that to try to broaden my horizons, and we all want to try to stretch ourselves. And unfortunately, when you do musicals, you sometimes get pigeonholed into that area. But I'm hoping that people start to see me in different lights.
Well, it's interesting because going back when I was sort of doing a little bit of research on you, you sort of grew up in Oklahoma, and I think on a farm. Like, how much of a farm? Was it a city farm, or were you out in?
No, it's a real farm. It's been around for many generations. I grew up on a 300-acre farm, but that's only part of what we farm. But now it's all in cattle. But when I grew up, it was cattle, cotton, and wheat. So I chopped cotton in the summers and worked on the wheat harvest, and it's a real farm.
And then it seemed that you're sort of following in the tiny footsteps of Kristin Chenoweth, because then you also go to the University of Oklahoma, and then you studied with the same voice teacher that she had. I mean,
Oklahoma City University, yeah. Florence Birdwell is the woman there, and she is kind of, in Oklahoma, she is the voice teacher, and I knew of her since I was 5 years old, and I went to college there, and that's when I became aware of Kristin Chenoweth. She had gone there as well, and she had already gone to New York to make a name for herself, so she became a big influence for me. Yeah.
And then I assume somebody you've now gotten to know a little bit along the way. Have you ever worked with her?
The only thing we've ever done together, she's been extremely supportive, and she actually helped me get my first agent. But she came to the show recently and couldn't be more supportive. We did a tribute to our voice teacher back in Oklahoma City with the Oklahoma City Philharmonic, and so we got to work together that night. But that's all we've ever really done together.
Oh gosh, okay. And then you just seem to hit town with a splash. I mean, the first with Sweet Smell of Success.
Yeah.
I mean, had you done anything really in New York before that?
Well, I had done 2 Broadway shows. I did Jekyll and Hyde on Broadway, and then I did Follies on Broadway with with a great cast. The last revival of Follies with Blythe Danner and Judy Ivey and Treat Williams.
Oh, right. Those are the actresses who can't sing. Right. Okay. So that's the.
Ouchie, ouch! I think they can. I think
Okay. Well, all right. So that
um,
well, we'll
I
agree to
think
disagree. But
I think that anyone can sing who communicates with their song, and those two women can. And I was more than honored to be working with them in Follies. And then Sweet Smell of Success happened, and then from there, I met people who started working on Light in the Piazza. So it started happening after that.
and then I know that was you've talked about that in the past. I mean, that was a very challenging role for you, playing Victoria Clark's daughter, who I get. How would you characterize her? Because I remember seeing that show, and it was sort of never made clear as to what exactly her difficulties were.
Well, we needed for it to remain a mystery. In reality, I mean, head injury, head trauma does create a vast many different ailments. You can't really put a finger on how it will affect one person. The story is that she was kicked in the head at 10 years old. There's a little bit of arrested development there, but she's 26 in our play, and we made her a person who was somewhat of a child in the mind, but definitely a woman physically, but someone who, when facing challenging situations, couldn't handle them. And that's about the gist of her problems.
And I guess the most challenging situation she faced was Matthew Morrison. So then,
Which doesn't seem like much of a challenge.
no. So and then the next thing, and that gets you your first Tony nomination, and then so it's just so interesting to me because you sort of do that, which is sort of was by Richard Rodgers' grandson, and
Right.
then a couple of 2 shows later you're doing South Pacific. I mean I mean the first Broadway revival of that Pulitzer Prize winner, and what was that like to be singing those songs that I'm sure you grew up singing to yourself? I mean, to be suddenly given that opportunity to do a revival of that classic.
Well, I did grow up on Rodgers and Hammerstein because in Oklahoma, the first musical you hear of is Oklahoma.
Of course.
So, and I immediately was a fan of Shirley Jones and Julie Andrews in Sound of Music and Mary Martin and all of those women who made Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals iconic for me. So when I came to New York and when I got to work with Adam Guettel, I didn't find that a coincidence. I felt like I'd come full circle. I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. So then to get to do South Pacific was kind of the cherry on top, just kind of going home again. And then it all worked out so beautifully because it was another pairing with all those wonderful artists like Bart Shear and Ted Sperling, who was our musical director on both Light in the Piazza and South Pacific. So it's kind of one of those things that it all felt like it was falling into the right place.
And then with both Light in the Piazza and South Pacific, I mean, you get to be part. I mean, you inspire Tony-winning performances from first Victoria Clark and then Paolo. How do you say his last name? Your co-star from South Pacific.
Jot. Yeah.
And then in between those shows, something that was just, it looked like you were having the time of your life doing Pajama Game with Harry Connick. You're a good actress, but I have to believe that you were really enjoying yourself too.
That was one of the most thrilling and fun things I've ever gotten to do. And theater is the art form is so beautiful because it can be alive and change and every night can be different. But when someone like Harry comes on the stage and improvs the piano in a different way every night, you improv yourself vocally. He encouraged me to do that and to try new things and to not be afraid to fall on my face, and I just learned a lot and I just had a blast doing it. So you don't get those chances very often. That was really fun.
And then that's you're working with Kathleen Marshall, and then with nice work if you can get it, that Gershwin pastiche that you did a couple of seasons ago with Matthew Broderick. I mean, she's doing that as well. Were you surprised to be offered that? Did that seem like, because that was sort of a little bit different than what we're used to from you?
Sure, and I think that's the reason why I ultimately wanted to do it. In one season, I had planned my season that year. I was doing King Lear in the fall, which is this dark, very, long Shakespeare play, and then I was going to do this really silly, kind of kind of tomboyish role in Nice Work If You Can Get It. And I felt like as an actor that would be the best thing for me to stretch myself in different directions. But I was glad for that because I had been playing ingenues for a while and then kind of uber feminine type of things. And I loved this idea of a comedy, this kind of tomboyish comedy, because then I knew that I would be doing Bridges of Madison County, which was this.
Oh, you already knew that.
Yeah, this was. I already knew what was coming up, and so you kind of make choices to make sure you're giving some different qualities of yourself, and also you're learning yourself to do different things. So I knew this tomboyish comedy would really go well with this matronly, kind of lonely mother, farm wife, So it's good.
Oh wow! Oh, that's and then of course and yet again, good luck charm. I mean, two people win Tony Awards: Judy Kaye and Michael McGrath from Nice Work If You Can Get It. So all of these other people winning Tony Awards. I mean, the fact that you're sort of going each time, sitting there. Other people end up winning in your category. It must be. It's both rewarding to get the nomination, but it must be a little disheartening sometimes to see.
Well,
sort of...
I try not to feel. When you win a Tony, I've never won once, but I would assume that when you win a Tony, you want it to be for the thing that you feel really took the most heart from you, and that doesn't happen all the time. But I think a person who loves the craft of this business, the craft of this work, would want to win for something that felt the most rewarding. And I look at something like Nice Work If You Can Get It, and of course I would have loved to have won, but it was such a silly, fun, easy role. And here you have Audra McDonald pouring her heart out on stage and going, acting out a rape scene in Porgy and Bess, and you think to yourself, if I won singing, Someone to Watch Over Me holding a rifle, getting laughs, if I won over Audra McDonald singing opera, falling on the ground, being raped, would that be fair? Would that be like artistically fair? And you say, no, I'm a smart person. No. I did South Pacific. I loved South Pacific. I'm not going to say that it's really light fare because I had to journey through some subject matters that were very dark. But that up against, say,
Patti
LuPone playing Mama Rose, where she's ripping her heart out every night and she's saying, rah, rah, everything's coming up. You think, well, no, that's not it either. It's not balanced. It's not weighted. I remember someone like Victoria Clark winning for Light in the Piazza because she had ripped her heart in two every night. So if I ever win a Tony, I want it to be because it feels like I deserved it.
As within this part, I'm just curious about, you mentioned those two very strong women parts in Light in the Piazza and Gypsy. I mean, would that be something in several decades you'd want to tackle either of those roles, Mama Rose or the...
Bring it on. I've always said that I would love to do the revival of Light in the Piazza playing Margaret. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's got to be a little ways down the road. But what is more imminent for you, I think you're going to do another sort of first in the late fall. Is it around New Year's or something?
It's New Year's.
You're doing something that would make Florence Birdwell happy, I think.
Exactly. My dream, I have a degree in opera, so it's been my dream to make my Metropolitan Opera debut, which I will be doing with in The Merry Widow with Renee Fleming and Nathan Gunn this New Year's Eve.
But not just New Year's Eve, or, I mean, for your fans, can they see it?
I can't remember the exact number of performances, but it's through January. So we do about 17 maybe performances.
Yeah, those opera people, I mean, they don't have to do 8 shows a week like the Broadway people, right?
Brilliant. Gosh, I wish that was the same for theater, yeah.
And then now Nathan Gunn, I know I've watched the two of you together on the Kennedy Center Honors singing that beautiful Sondheim Bernstein song Somewhere. We're sort of an awards website. We love all awards. So the Kennedy Center Honors, what's it like to be part of the paying tribute, I guess in that case it was to Barbra Streisand.
Yes.
What's the process? Do you go? How many days rehearsal do you get?
You really only go down on the day of, and you kind of throw it all together. You rehearse maybe a couple of times in New York with Rob Ashford, who usually directs the entire thing, and rehearse kind of where you go and the staging. But you don't. You kind of throw it together at the last minute, which is always really fun, and we trust each other to do it that way because it's too busy to get everybody's schedules together. But it's the most amazing. I've been part of it 3 times. The Barbara Cook, Jerry Herman, and Barbra Streisand. And when you go there, it's the who's who, absolute who's who of the entire artistic world. But everybody is there to honor someone else. So everyone is on their very best, most beautiful and generous behavior. It's not like the Oscars or the Tonys or the Emmys where there are lots of competition.
Right.
People vying for the same thing. Everyone's there to honor someone else who's inspired them, and so I think everyone feels very humbled to be there. And so you're standing backstage in the green room area, and you turn to your right, and it's Clint Eastwood, and you turn to your left, and it's Meryl Streep, and you turn this way, and it's George Jones or Garth Brooks or some great jazz legend or a dancer or whatever, and everyone's just in the same room, and it makes you feel really great to be a part of it. It's very exciting.
Well, listen, I mean, the fact that you've just mentioned Clint Eastwood and Meryl Streep, it's meant to be. These seem like these guardian angels. You've had them in, in a couple of moments in your life. So we're certainly wishing you the best of luck next week at the Tonys, and thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
It's been nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Good. I think we're